Jenny McCarthy is, if we break down her progression, it's kind of a case in point of this autism or vaccine of the gap syndrome. In 2005, her son Evan was diagnosed as autistic. In 2006, she started giving talks and writing articles about how she was an indigo mom and he was a crystal child. She was deep in the New Age movement, and the indigo children were kids born around Generation X or thereabouts who supposedly had spiritual connection to a greater universal consciousness, and my mom used to tell me I was an indigo child. So Jenny apparently thinks she was an indigo child, but now the indigo generation is giving birth to crystal children who are even more spiritually connected, and blah, 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 blah. But that never went anywhere, probably because the New Age movement doesn't really have the PR backup of the anti-vaccination movement. So that's where she jumped to in 2007. In 2007, Evan was quote-unquote cured of his autism, at least that's what she says. I don't know if he actually was, or if she's just saying that. And this pretty much cemented her resolve. Well, it must have been vaccines. If there's a cure, there must have been a cause, and everyone's saying it's vaccines, and these people are very convincing. Therefore, it was vaccines. So in 2008, she started making the media rounds. Well, I guess she started in 2007, but in 2008, she hit Oprah big, she hit Larry King, she wrote a book called Mother Warriors, which is about those intrepid mothers who are fighting the scientific establishment because all they want to do is help the kids that they care about so very much. And they know better than doctors, and they know better than scientists, and they know better than the broad, overwhelming majority consensus of immunologists, scientists, and medical doctors. Now I have the Landau-Kleffner possibility. Landau-Kleffner is a disorder that is often misdiagnosed as autism because it sets in about the same time and is characterized also by certain difficulties in sociability and communication. And it's also characterized by seizures, which Evan was having. And some people have conjectured that he never had autism. He had Landau-Kleffner. And Landau-Kleffner can be medicated and pretty much cured so long as you stay on the medication. So if he was cured, it's entirely possible he was never autistic in the first place. He was just misdiagnosed. We have to know the tactics these people use because this isn't just a scientific battle. This is a rhetorical battle, it's a media battle because these people aren't doing good science. So generally they use celebrities instead of scientists. In addition to Jenny McCarthy and Jim Carrey, they have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. writing for the Huffington Post. Oprah is shilling for them at every possible opportunity. Recently, Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins came out as an anti-vaxxer. They use publicity instead of publishing. The research I've told you about is pretty much the extent of their actual published research. Generally, they leap straight into the public eye. Creationists do the same thing. It's a constant tactic of pseudoscientists. They take it right to the people instead of going through the hoops of peer review and the scientific process. It's a really crude version of populism, basically. They inflate low-quality research, like Wakefield's tests. The first one, I forgot to mention this, but it is important that it's entirely possible his 1998 study was actually entirely fraudulent. People have pointed to some evidence saying that he made most of it up. They rely on emotional anecdotes from their mother warriors that catch people off guard, because people aren't used to arguing with these people. They are really distraught, and really they are dealing with something that's very difficult for them to deal with, and so it's hard sometimes to try to be rational in the face of these mothers who are being very emotional and just trying to help their kids. And they really are just trying to help their kids. And sometimes they flat out lie. Like when they keep saying that antifreeze is in vaccines, even though they've been corrected, God knows how many times, but they keep on saying it. Their biggest tactic really is what I call their martyr complex. They like to pretend there's a huge conspiracy out to get them, and that's why nobody believes them. That's why scientists are constantly telling them they're wrong. They say things like big science is suppressing us. Well, then who did all the studies? It wasn't them. They only did a handful of really bad studies. But the studies testing thimerosal, the studies testing the link between vaccines and autism, the people who removed thimerosal from the vaccines in the first place are big science. Big science, however you want to decide who that is, has been bending over backwards since day one to try to test their conjectures. But they've all been falsified. So they say it's all about profit. Well, a study in pediatrics showed that at least on the injection end of things, pediatricians lose money on vaccination. It actually costs them on average 22% more to buy the vaccines in the first place than they are reimbursed by insurance companies. So they're not making money. On the manufacturing side of things, well, certainly they do make money off vaccines, but they don't really make a whole lot of money off vaccines because kids get vaccinated once, 2-3 times for booster shots. And a lot of the times, they donate millions of dollars worth of vaccines to developing nations. So yeah, they make some profit on vaccines, but it is nothing compared to the profit they make on ACE inhibitors, beta blockers, antihistamines, the various pills that people have to take every day of their lives, mood regulators, antidepressants. These are the kind of things that are the real money makers in the pharmaceutical industry. Vaccines, not so much. Then they whine about conflicts of interest. Well, they have conflicts of interest, like Wakefield's funding from the company that then sued the vaccine manufacturers in '98. But apparently it's only a conflict of interest when the data that comes out of it contradicts what they have to say. They think they're being attacked, they think there's a big conspiracy, but the fact is they're just about the wrongest people on the face of the planet at the moment. But what do they have to offer? Do they have anything to offer? What's their cure? Their cure is chelation. It has a proper, though still somewhat controversial use in heavy metal detoxification. If you have lead poisoning or mercury poisoning or any actual heavy metal poisoning, you can be injected with a chelating agent that will run its way through your system, bind to the heavy metal and bring it out, but it's still very dangerous. It's also worth mentioning that there's a number of different chelating agents, and the chelating agent that the anti-vaxxers use is not the chelating agent that is United States medical standard. So the symptoms that can go with chelation therapy: flu-like symptoms, immunocompromisation, hypertension, cardiac arrhythmia, respiratory arrest, hypercalcemia, which itself can lead to secondary cardiac arrhythmia and respiratory arrest, and it can kill you. People have died getting chelation therapy because it's a very dangerous therapy. Vaccines, on the other hand, when we look at them as a treatment modality, have the following statistics. These are pulled from the CDC's numbers. We're looking at 20th century annual morbidity average for the various diseases, and the 2007 total morbidity from these diseases. Smallpox, 50,000, 0. Diphtheria, 175,000, 0. Pertussis, 147, 207,271, down to 10,454, and that's highlighted in red because that number is actually up tenfold from the average during the 1970s. It used to be about 1,000 per year, and in 2007 it was 10,000 because kids aren't getting vaccinated at the same rate they used to be. Tetanus down to 28, polio down to 0 in the Western Hemisphere, not just America. Measles down to 43, mumps 800, rubella 12, congenital rubella 0, and Haemophilus influenzae, which causes a form of meningitis in kids under 5 years old, is down from about 20,000 to 202. If we look at these, we have nothing less, with the exception of pertussis, which used to be up at 99%. We have nothing less than 98% reduction.
Were those 20th century annual morbidity? Is that the average?
That's the average over the course of the 20th century.
So total number of deaths over the 20th century?
No, yeah, that's the average per year. Yeah, that's the average per year.
And so it would be a lot higher if you took, say, just the first quarter of the 20th century.
Yeah, you'd have probably hundreds of thousands because this is taking into account the entire century.